Chapter 9, A Real Nightmare. My dad is really good at taking care of his things. Maybe it is one of the rules of being a gentleman, but I don't really know. I can't remember. Take care of your things, my dad likes to say, and your things will take care of you. He takes such good care of his car, Luis, for example, that she will probably run for a third geological age, although she already has one transmission in the junkyard, which my mom says is the car equivalent of having one foot in the grave. My dad also takes good care of our house and our yard. He can use a hammer. He can climb a ladder. He can climb down, too, usually. And he owns a power drill in a box. He takes really good care of his children, too. Just look at us. A couple of weeks of scratching ourselves to death, and we were practically normal again, on our way back to school. So when my dad wasn't playing with his Johnny Astro, he kept it in its box and set the box on the top shelf of the highest bookcase for safekeeping. The Johnny Astro sure was amazing, even sitting in its box. I headed into the living room to look at it one last time before going to school. Johnny Astro made me very popular, my dad's voice replayed itself in my ears. Everyone wanted to play with me. Johnny Astro, I read across the box for the millionth time. Really flies, no wires, no connections. Fly your spacecraft anywhere. I stared, unblinking. I shifted my PDK under my arm. I swallowed. Alvin, my mom yelled from the kitchen. Hurry, honey, your bus is almost here. Coming, Mom, I yelled back. But first, all I needed was a stool and to stretch until I could reach it. Johnny Astro was perfect for show and tell. Someday, my dad's low whisper filled my ears. This will be yours. Someday. I had no idea that someday would be today. Thanks, Dad, I whispered. You're the best. I even remembered my manners. Then I slid the box into a large shopping bag and I slipped out the door. What's that? Pinky asked as soon as I got on the bus. I gasped. I could hardly believe it. I was already flickering on Pinky's radar. Johnny Astro, I said. What's Johnny Astro? The greatest toy ever made, I said. Never heard of it, said Pinky. What does it do? I'll show you at show and tell, I said. But you don't do show and tell, said Hobson. I do too, I protested. You show, but you never tell, said Sam. Sam was right. I never tell. But I was fabulous at show. I knew how to pick 'em. If something tells a story, and as long as I can reach it, and it is something I can carry without using a wheelbarrow, it is probably perfect. I brought in all sorts of treasures. My dad's fantastic reading glasses, my mom's pearl necklace that she looks so good in, Calvin's baseball card collection, and now Johnny Astro. If this is the greatest toy ever made, you should show and tell now, said Pinky, before we get to school, or we'll never know what you wanted to say. It made perfect sense. I could hardly wait anyway. I pulled the box out of the bag. The gang read the box. All jaws dropped open. All tongues fell out. That's just the box, I said. Wait till you see it in action. I fingered the edge of the cover. Open it, Sam pleaded. Open it. I held my breath. I wanted to open it. I wanted to show the gang the most fabulous toy ever made. I couldn't wait. Whoosh! I lifted the cover. An old smell of fun and excitement filled our noses. Then whoosh! The bus rounded a corner, and we rounded in our seats. And when we all sat back up, Johnny Astro didn't look the same. There were a few pieces missing. They were not in the box. They were not in the bag, or in the aisle, or under the seats. They were nowhere to be found or to be seen. I was not even sure which pieces were missing, but there were a few empty spaces in the plastic package where there should have been parts. Oh no, I cried. My dad's going to kill me. The noise on the bus went round and round. It was so loud that my voice got lost. No one turned around. Even the driver's eyes, which usually lift into her mirror whenever there is an extraordinary outburst, did not shift. I swallowed. I blinked. I did my best not to cry. The wheels on the bus went round and round. I bounced up and down. But then a tear rolled down my cheek. Then another and another. And before I knew it, I was crying full blast. Crying is really great. Everything is better afterward. Except when the next stop is school. And when you walk into class, you find a substitute teacher. Alvin Ho, called the sub. She was taking attendance, which is where most of my troubles usually begin with subs. I opened my PDK. I needed an escape route. Alvin, the sub called again. Here, answered Flea. You are Alvin Ho, asked the sub. No, man, I'm Flea, said Flea. That's Alvin. She pointed at me. The sub looked at Flea and then at me over the top of her glasses. He can answer for himself, she said. No, he can't, said Flea. Why not? He just can't, said Flea. He's Alvin Ho. The sub's eyebrows arched like two unconnected bridges. I will have no funny business in my classroom today. Is that clear? Said the sub. Flea nodded, and her lips curled in, which meant that she had more to say. Alvin talks normally at home, Flea continued, but at school he only talks with his eyes. Oh? Just watch his eyes, said Flea. I rolled my eyes, not on purpose. They just rolled on their own like a couple of loose pearls from my mom's necklace the time I borrowed it for show and tell. Oops, said Flea. Is that a joke? Asked the sub. No, ma'am, Flea shook her head. The sub looked puzzled. No one mentioned a special needs student. Alvin's not special, Flea explained matter-of-factly. He just doesn't speak in school. The sub fixed her gaze on Flea. Then she locked her gaze on me. It meant that I needed to be on my best behavior. Fortunately, I've had lots of practice in good behavior. I knew what to do. I kept my eyes low. I kept my hands in plain sight. I stayed in my seat. Then show and tell began. Jules showed a pox scab. That's nothing, said Eli. So then Eli showed his. It was redder than Jules's, but it wasn't redder than Hobson's, which was crimson. But that was nothing compared to Esha's, which was practically still oozing. Then everyone began raising their shirts and lowering their pants to see who had the biggest and ugliest scab of all. It was fabulous. Then the substitute said that was enough of the scabs. But some of us had taken off so much of our clothing by then that it took a while to get it all back on. Then the dreaded moment came. Alvin, said the sub, do you have a show and tell? I froze. I avoided eye contact. I held my breath. I sucked in my gut. I clutched my PDK. His show and tell met with some misfortune on the bus this morning, said Flea, hopefully, so it can't be shown. Misfortune? Said the sub. She gave me the stare that said I wasn't yet finished with misfortune. So I slowly pulled out the box. Johnny Astro, gasped the sub. I had one of these. It's the best toy in the world. It really flies. You can fire it up and send it into orbit and bring it down again. It is absolutely spectacular. The class went silent. No one moved. No one even breathed. The sub got very quiet. She wiped her eyes. Nothing else like it was ever made, she sighed. And she smiled at me. And I smiled back, just a little. Maybe it is even a gentleman's rule to smile back when a lady smiles at you. But I don't really know. I can't remember. For a sub, I guess she was okay. As for show and tell, it was the best thing I had ever brought in. Everyone wanted to play with me at recess. We'll get it up in the air in no time, said Pinky, carrying the box out to the playground. I'll hold it while you fix it. I nodded. Then we lifted off the cover. The missing pieces were back, but they were wrecked. I found them on the back of the bus, said Flea, and put them back in there for you. Don't worry, said Eli, whose father fixes cars. I can fix anything. My dad showed me how. I can do origami, said Sam. I'll make you a new balloon. Here are some Band-Aids, said Eli, peeling a dirty one from each elbow. And I've got spray paint at home if you want to come over after school, said Naya. I opened my PDK. There were instructions for surviving practically every disaster except a Johnny Astro disaster. That's the problem with PDKs. You never know what you're missing until you are missing it. Alvin, said Flea, putting a hand on my shoulder, people will think you are careless, but you really weren't. It was an accident, said Naya. Yeah, an accident, echoed Eli. It's a good thing that it wasn't your dad's. My heart sank like a dead battery, and I don't think I really need to tell you what happened next. Chapter 10, Facing the Music. My dad is not only a gentleman, but he is da man, which is a lot like being da dad, which means he can handle quite a lot. He can even eat wasabi without crying. He can watch a scary movie without flinching. He can carry a big, heavy rock straight across the yard and set it right where my mom wants it. And then he can carry it back again if my mom changes her mind. When he's had a bad day, my dad can play the piano like crazy until he is his old self again. Or if he's had a truly horrible day, he can curse a wild blue streak like William Shakespeare. Sorrow on thee, thou spongy onion-eyed hugger-mugger, my dad might say. Then he'd write it down. Or, clean thine ears, thou lumpish bum Bailey. Every time he thinks of a new curse, he writes it on a little piece of paper and puts it in a tin. Cursing like Shakespeare always makes him feel better. That's my dad. He's the man. He can handle just about anything. So right after school, I put Johnny Astro back where it belonged, and I slipped in between Calvin and Annabelle where I belong, and we waited with Lucy by the door for our dad to come home. Are you sure Dad said it was yours? Asked Calvin. Maybe we should just have your funeral now, Annabelle whispered sadly. But I was in luck. When our dad finally stepped through the door, he was in unusually cheerful mood. Hi, everyone, he said cheerfully. Silence. What's up? Silence. How about some more fun with Johnny Astro today? No one said anything. My dad whistled across the living room. Cheerfully, he reached for Johnny Astro. Cheerfully, Johnny Astro came down. Really flies, said the box. Fly your spacecraft anywhere. Then my dad opened the box. His whistling stopped. His breathing stopped. His feet stopped. Then he staggered backward. What is this? He wailed. Johnny Astro, what happened to you? He cried. Then he really cried. He put his head in his hands and his shoulders went up and down. Carefully, I put my arm around my dad. Crying is really great. Everything is better afterward. Usually. But this was not unusual. This was not usual. This was the best toy ever made. What bootless, toad-spotted bladder did this? My dad howled. I'll see thee hanged. What happened to my Johnny Astro? He screeched. And my mom rushed in to see what was going on. Alvin! My dad bellowed. My chin quivered. My face wrinkled. Dear, you know Alvin can't speak when he's frightened, my mom said calmly. This isn't about speaking, my dad said. His teeth were clenched. It's about respecting other people's things. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I had to save it for when things got really rough, which I could see was coming faster than a meteorite falling from the sky and aiming straight for me. Maybe it was an accident, squealed Annabelle. An accident? Howled my dad. How can an accident happen on the top shelf? Maybe he needed a good show and tell, said Calvin. And the accident happened on the bus. What? Roared my dad. It was time. I began to cry. Crying is really great. It is a good way of softening the blow coming to you. And it helps if the tears run off your chin and you slobber a little and your eyes get puffy and you are a real mess. Oh, Alvin, you poor thing, said my mom, which really helps too. She put her arms around me. If lightning struck, it would hit her first, which is probably one of the rules of being a mom. This is more than an accident, said my dad. He held up the newly repaired and heavily bandaged Johnny Astro. Maybe the guys tried to fix it at recess, said Calvin. My dad turned seaweed green. Then he turned sea foamy. Then he turned pomegranate, then grapefruit, then orange. Normally I like orange. It is the color of tigers and sherbet and sunsets and mango. But I did not like this orange. It was danger alert orange, which is only helpful around construction sites. Annabelle and Calvin stared with their mouths wide open. Getting busted is the best spectator sport around our house, except when you're the one getting busted. My Johnny Astro, my dad wailed. He put the cover back on it and hugged the box sadly. Then he marched off to the piano like he always does when he's had a hard day and played like a wild, savage beast. My dad learned to play the piano when he was about my age. So now when he plays, he sounds like Brahms, even though his fingers are as thick as bratwurst. As long as he was playing, I was okay. And the longer he played, the more okay I was going to be. Because as we all know, music is medicine. The more you take, the better you feel. Finally, he stopped. Alvin needs piano lessons, said my dad. It will keep him busy. It will give him confidence. It will change his life. My dad paused. It might even give him a good show and tell, he added. And so it was decided that I would take piano lessons, which was really marvelous. I was expecting a grounding, but instead I was going to face the music. Thanks, Dad, I cried. My dad said nothing. I wanted to say something else, something that would make my dad feel good for taking it easy on me, but I didn't know what else to say until I thought of something. Someday, when I'm old and beastly and have sausages for fingers, I will play the piano just like you, Dad, instead of punishing my kid for destroying my Johnny Astro. Hair grew on the back of my dad's hands. He looked strangely beastly again. I think he needed more music to smooth his soul.